everyone. We're having an interesting time here. Welcome to the Truth in Life broadcast, where we do our best every week to bring you a biblical perspective on the things we see going on around us and the headlines around the world in the same tradition established for this program by Rabbi Moshe Lori. I'm going to have to answer this phone call, everyone. So we're on. So, all righty, we'll take them here then. Talk to you later. All right. We are streaming this evening, except on Rumble. Sorry, friends, on that. But like I said, you've got me doing solo tonight, right? This is the Truth in Life broadcast, and we've got lots of things to try to go through this week and cover. And of course, we have a couple of friends that are missing in action, as we'll say. So I'll give you that update in just a moment. But first, I want to say, I mean, these things are, this is kind of an expensive thing that comes your way. So if you want, uh, with the broadcast, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. You can send anything you want there. So it's 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, and Marion, Illinois 62959. I'm going to tell you that just before, a little earlier, I was producing the program, and Donald Trump on Truth Social made the announcement that he's going to talk about the he had announced and made his announcement. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. Yeah, it says that it is his great honor to announce that the Board of Peace has been formed. Okay, so talking about watching out for that. So that's happening. Don't know when they're going to make the announcement of the members of the Board of Peace, but I also have things talking about here how this Gaza peace plan has officially entered phase 2. And so we'll talk about that. We've got things on Iran to talk about. And also, I always end with archaeology. And this week we have, um, we're going to talk about, actually, there's been a very significant loss in the archaeological community, in the archaeological world. Dr. Gabriel Barkat, and he was instrumental in the Temple Mount sifting uh, stuff that has been going on there. He has passed away. May his memory be a blessing to everyone. And I got to check with Jim here to see what it is he wants to talk to me about because I'm trying to get into the show and he just keeps calling. So why do you keep calling me? I don't know how it is I have no sound. Or maybe the microphone. Maybe the microphone needs sound. All right. Well, let's try it then and see if we get some sound going through. So,
All right.
and we shall see. I'm going to put you on mute here, and then if you have anything else, then you can, or it would be helpful maybe if you can just text me. How about that? Can you text me?
Yeah, I'll check this.
All righty. So hopefully we have some sound now. So again, once again, welcome to the Truth in Life broadcast, where we do our best every week to bring you a biblical perspective of what we see going on around us and the headlines around the world. And once again, I would like to remind you if you want to sponsor the program, you can do that at 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63. That's 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. And you can help us out with our, you know, we can use that money for the broadcast. We can actually use it for the congregation too. But yeah, these things like our platform and all of the Wi-Fi connections, everything coming your way, even the electric bill. Yes, you can help us out with that. So looks like we have sound now and we're ready to roll. As I was explaining before before on this. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's God's Plan Phase 2 that is actually going to be launched, right? And I guess it has. We're entering Phase 2. We've got all of the things about Iran, lots to talk about Iran. And in the archaeological world, unfortunately, there's been a big loss. Dr. Gabriel Barkai, he was pioneer of the Temple Mount research, and he has passed away. So we are going to do a little bit of a tribute there to him. May his memory be a blessing. Also, have here that um, just earlier this evening, Donald Trump put on Truth Social. It is my great honor to announce the Board of Peace has been formed. The member board will be announced shortly, but I can say with certainty that it is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time. And any place. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We've been talking about watching the Board of Peace because it just seems like that is a setup that eventually could lead to maybe the fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy where he saw the figure and he saw the iron, the two legs of iron, and then it went to the feet of iron and clay, and then the 10 toes of iron and clay. So we may be seeing a setup with that. So just wanted to let you know that those uh, that has it's come to fruition, and that is going to be announced soon. I was trying to check the broadcast anywhere around that I could on the television before I got here, and I was not seeing any more information about that. So let's jump into this, because after we talk about this, and we need to really get into the situation with Iran um, as well. I was watching Mario Murillo does a broadcast very much like this, although he has a lot of uh, people helping him. And he can put in video clips and all different sorts of things. And he was covering the current events, things that are going on as well. And some of the things that he was talking about, it's true. We as Christian believers have an extra task here upon us to remain, I guess you could say, keep our tempers under control, maybe keep our heads together, keep listening and being very much in tune with the Holy Spirit, so that when these things happen, we can be guided, and not let our tempers get out of control, not get frustrated, not let negative emotions come up. We have to keep reminding ourselves we're not fighting flesh and blood, but powers and principalities and rulers in the darkness, right? And so we bring you these things every week. We tell you these things, of course, to keep it in mind for prayer, because we as believers are going to have a very, very difficult job. And I mean, gosh, hasn't already felt like a long year? I mean, this is a lot of stuff that's gone on just in the past couple of weeks, just at the beginning of this year. And it doesn't look like it's going to slow down. Doesn't seem that anyone feels like it's a slow down. Things were nutty enough in 2025. Rating through all of these people. Satan, we uh, as it says, in Hebrews, keep our focus and listening to the Holy Spirit and all that He wants to guide us through with this. That God's in charge with everything. So it's been, even with our friends that are not here joining us this evening. I mean, it's been a tough beginning of 2020. Richard, he ended up in the hospital with MRSA. And originally thought it was just a kidney problem, but evidently he contracted MRSA that caused an infection with a kidney stone in his kidney. And so now he's at home. Fortunately, he's out of the hospital now, at home with a PIC line and getting antibiotics. So he talked to me last night, sounded a lot better on the phone, but he said it's probably going to be about a month before he's going to be able to come back. So keep Richard in your prayer. that this MRSA virus is destroyed in his system. MRSA, infection is what I'm trying to say. And our friend Jim is still in the hospital, dealing with, I guess, complications from the biopsy that they did for him. They had to go back in a second bronchial procedure and remove a blood clot, which has eased up his breathing. Hopefully, he'll be out of ICU soon and that they will be able to get him back on the medication he needs to be on. Still haven't heard the outcome of this biopsy, so keep him in your prayers. Um, and they're treating him as a cancer patient, but we haven't heard any verification. They are pretty good about knowing what to see, but you know, we're just hoping that indeed it's maybe just a couple growths or something, but situation. But whatever it is, I mean, the Lord is in charge. He's gonna, He keeps us in His hand and keeps us guiding us through. And so we've even had a little challenge this evening. Like I said, for those of you who maybe normally see us through Rumble, you wouldn't see us live this evening. We get it posted on Rumble later, but we're having a little bit of a trouble there with our account to Rumble. So say prayers over these computers. We need to say prayers over the computers constantly. So let's get into some of the headlines tonight since we're a little bit behind. We were trying to figure out that problem ahead of time and couldn't get it to go onto Rumble. So, but let's just jump on in here. Trump's Gaza peace plan officially entering phase 2, and that's been announced by Steve Witkoff. And this is coming from the Jerusalem Post. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced the launch of phase 2 of U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan on Wednesday. Sources familiar with the details told the Jerusalem Post would announce a move to phase 2 on last Wednesday. We are announcing the launch of phase 2 of the president's 20-point plan to end the Gaza conflict, moving from ceasefire to demilitarization, technocratic governance, and reconstruction. And this is what he wrote on X, or what we used to know as Twitter. Phase 2 establishes a transitional technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, and begins the full demilitarization and reconstruction of Gaza, primarily the disarmament of all unauthorized personnel. The U.S. expects Hamas to comply fully with its obligations, including the immediate return of the final deceased hostage. So keep that family in prayer. They're waiting for the body of their loved one, and it's particularly heinous and cruel what has happened here. Failure to do so will bring serious consequences, he said. Phase 1 delivered historic humanitarian aid, maintained the ceasefire, returned all living hostages, and the remains of 27 of the 28 deceased hostages. We're deeply grateful to Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar for their indispensable mediation efforts that made all progress to date possible. And then this phase 2 plan, the Palestinian body will have 15 members and will be led by Ali Sha'at, a former deputy minister in the Western backed Palestinian Authority, who's been in charge of developing industrial zones, according to a joint statement by mediators Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. Now, it's interesting because Turkey has not wanted Turkey involved in any of this, but it seems like they are still involved. Other members tapped by Nikolay Medlinov, the former UN Middle East envoy who is expected to represent the Board of Peace on the ground, include private sector and NGO representatives, according to a list of names obtained by Reuters. Witkoff did not say how many members of the body would include or name them. Another announcement regarding the Board of Peace was expected to be made at Davos next week, a European diplomat said. Sha'at said in a radio interview that the committee would focus first on providing urgent relief for Gaza, including the provision of housing for displaced Palestinians, many of whom are living in makeshift tent shelters and amid the rubble. And he says, if I bring bulldozers and push the rubble into the sea and make new islands, new land, I can win new land for Gaza and at the same time clear the rubble. This won't take more than 3 years, Sha'at told a West Bank radio station. More land Gaza. Well, I'm, we'll see how this goes, but these Palestinian people just need to be taken out of there and it needs to be turned back over to Israel. That's just my opinion. Witkoff said that the phase 2 of Trump's plan will also begin the full demilitarization, reconstruction of Gaza, primarily the disarmament of all unauthorized personnel. Hamas, which refuses to lay down its weapons, agreed in October to hand over governance to the Technocratic Committee. It remains unclear how Hamas, which has regrouped since a fragile ceasefire began in October, will be disarmed as required by the plan. In the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority welcomed Trump's effort to move forward with the Gaza phased plan, as stated in an ex post by Palestinian Vice President Hussein al Sheikh. And voiced support for the committee. Sheikh said institutions in Gaza should be linked to those run by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, upholding the principle of one system, one law, and one legitimate weapon. See, this is a problem because it's not the West Bank, it's Judea and Samaria. So it's just a shame how much this has gotten out of hand. This whole phony two-state Palestinian, all this, it's all a lie. There never was a Palestinian people, in that area. It's all been made up. And again, the lies have been. It's sort of like telling people who have mental problems that, oh, yes, you're okay and everything's fine, when actually they need help. And this is also perpetuating this sort of same lie. There is no Palestine. There never has been an indigenous Palestinian people. It was called Palestine by the enemies of Israel because the Philistines, the Romans, knew the Philistines were the arch enemies of Israel. So they named it Palestine to be to shove it in the face of the Israelis, which were the Hebrew people at that time. There was no country of Israel back in around 70 AD. So anyway, this is what the Romans had come up with, and it's not like these groups of Palestinian quote unquote people have anything to do with the Philistines that once lived in that area. So it says here, sources said the list. Let's see, the list of these. The head of the Chamber of Commerce, Ayed Abu Ramadan, and Omar Shamali, who worked for the Palestine Telecommunications Company. Sources said the list would also include Sami Nasman, a retired senior Palestinian Authority security officer, a longtime critic of Hamas. Nasman, a member of Abbas's Fatah movement, is originally from Gaza but has lived in the West Bank since 2007. Well, he's lived in Judea and Samaria. Anyway, Israeli officials did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Qatar, a key mediator in the Gaza conflict, unfortunately, I think the enemy within, has expressed hope that Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff's announcement of the launch of the phase 2 of Trump's 20-point plan to end the conflict in Gaza will help consolidate and the calm. Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majid Al Ansari said on Wednesday. And it says here that Talik Gavili, the mother of the slain hostage of Staff Sergeant Major Ron Gavili, confirmed that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called her and confirmed that the return of her son's remains from Gaza are our top priority. Gavili is the final hostage whose remains are still being held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas. You know, they do everything they can to hold sway. If they give over all of the hostages, they lose sway. And it says here the statement on phase 2 focuses on the demand of disarming Hamas terrorists and demilitarizing Gaza. There will be no IDF withdrawal until they are disarmed. No construction, no reconstruction. The Rafah border crossing has not yet been reopened because we insist on bringing Ron's remains home. That's according to his mother, I think it says here. So anyway, they're trying to finish all of that up, but of course, Hamas has no interest in going along with that. Interestingly, the House has passed the State Department funding bill with Israel aid, right? And this is coming to us from the Jewish News Syndicate. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the State Department's annual funding bill on Wednesday with billions of dollars in security aid to Israel. The funding package, which also includes appropriations for the U.S. Treasury Department, Executive Office, the District of Columbia, and other foreign aid, provides Israel with $3.3 billion under the Foreign Military Financing Program. It passed on a bipartisan basis, 341 to 79. Along with the $500 million given to Israel as part of the U.S. defense budget for anti-missile programs, the funding passed on Wednesday meets the agreement that Israel and the United States signed in 2016 to provide Israel with $3.8 billion in military aid each fiscal year until 2028. Military funding to Israel has long been controversial, they claim. Of course, uh, Israel has lots of critics, right? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said recently he would like to end U.S. foreign assistance to the Jewish state. I want to taper off military aid within the next 10 years, he told The Economist. We very deeply appreciate the military aid that America has given us over the years, but here too, we've come of age. We've developed incredible capacities in our economy, which will soon reach, certainly within a decade, it'll reach about $1 trillion. He said. It's not a huge economy, it's not a small economy. The Israeli premier added that reducing U.S. euro within the next 10 years was in the works. Moving to reduce U.S. aid might improve Israel's ability to act independently. Following accusations from the Israeli government and some Republicans in Congress that the United States slow-rolled arms shipments during the Biden administration over concerns about the civilian deaths in Gaza. But it may also face pushback from American lawmakers given that the money provided to Israel is largely used to purchase U.S. arms, like the F-35, and is effectively a subsidy for the American Defense Ministry. So it goes both ways, huh? Senator Lindsey Graham said that if Israel doesn't want the money, the United States shouldn't wait 10 years for Netanyahu to taper it off, and said that he would dramatically expedite the timetable. The billions in taxpayer dollars that would be saved by expediting the termination of military aid to Israel will and should be plowed back into the U.S. military, which is the best in the world and in great demand. These billions need to be recouped as soon as possible so we can help President Trump's $1.5 trillion national budget goal for our military. Well, actually, Lindsey Graham, that's not a whole lot of money that we're giving Israel in the whole scheme of things. Okay. In addition to the military assistance to Israel, Wednesday's funding package includes other Israel related provisions, including a continued ban on U.S. funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA, as it's called, and prohibitions on funding international courts that are investigating. Uh, APAC welcomed the passage of the bill in the House on Wednesday. The pro-Israel provisions in the bill further reinforce the bipartisan and ironclad support for the U.S.-Israel partnership in Congress. It stated these resources can help ensure that our ally can confront shared strategic threats and that America has a strong and capable ally in the heart of the Middle East. It's probably our only real ally in the Middle East. And you have been hearing President Trump this week talk about Greenland, haven't you? Well, this is coming from Fox News. Denmark's foreign minister admitted he shares concerns with President Donald Trump and his officials over Greenland's vulnerability to Chinese and Russian influence, despite his firm opposition to a U.S. takeover. There's absolutely no Chinese footprint in Greenland, Danish Foreign Minister Lars Loke Rasmussen said on Special Report Wednesday. Having said that, there's always a bit of truth in what he, or Donald Trump, is saying. We definitely share the concern that the Arctic is not any longer a low tension region. And of course, we have to be aware of that. And that's why we've invested 15 billion US dollars last year in capabilities in Greenland. So they don't, they don't want to admit President Trump is right, but he's right, right? He's always right. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Loke Rasmussen said he understands President Donald Trump's concern about China and Russia, but called for a facts-based dialogue. The remarks followed Danish and Greenlandic leaders' trip to Washington this week for talks with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rasmussen remained defiant against a U.S. invasion, warning it would be the end of NATO. I think I saw a remark on Facebook. Somebody said, "Hmm, if we just go in and take, it means that that our punishment would be we would be dropped out of NATO." And he said, "I they considered it a win-win, right? Go ahead and take. We'd get the land for nothing, and we don't have to, pay our money into NATO anymore." So, anyway, I thought that was a little bit funny. We all belong to NATO, and we think that our way forward should be that we, combine forces. So we share the concerns to some extent, but not the methods, if I could put it that way, he said. Former U.S. ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands, rejects Rasmussen's view, saying Denmark lacks the resources needed to defend the territory against adversaries. She warned both Russia and China are actively seeking to establish footholds in the region. See, that's why, all of that's been going on in Venezuela. They had a strong foothold there. And so these are the things that President Trump, is doing to try to put America back on an even footing, actually a superior footing, so that we can deal with these rogue nations, what China and Russia are doing. So it's Greenland has independence from Denmark, but its leaders have signaled they are not interested in becoming part of the United States. Still, Trump has repeatedly spoken about securing Greenland as a priority. The United States needs Greenland for the purpose of national security, Trump wrote in a Truth Social post on Wednesday. He said that Greenland is integral to the country's Golden Dome project, right? A proposed U.S. missile defense shield. Trump added that if the U.S. does not secure the territory, Russia or China will, and called on NATO to back U.S. efforts to take control of Greenland. So, um, President Trump is always playing a different level of game than most of these people think. They think he's just a simple man, and he has common sense, but he's not playing a simple game here. Um, this is coming from the Jerusalem Post. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu personally asked U.S. President Donald Trump to hold off on a U.S. military attack on Iran. So now we're going to kind of start working our way into talking about what's been going on in Iran. Um, Elon Musk sent Starlink to help out everyone there, but unfortunately, the command there of these ayatollahs, the people in that the despots that are in control in Iran, were able to even block. So um, somewhere upwards, some people say somewhere between 2 and 3,000 people have been murdered. Some say closer to 20,000, maybe even more, have been murdered. We can't get any confirmation on that. There's no images that can come out for certain. People have tried their best, but it's just not able to be known right now. The two leaders reported, this is President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, reportedly held a call on Wednesday. The White House confirmed that a call took place after the Jerusalem Post asked for comment. However, the White House did not confirm the contents of the call. Notably, that same day, Trump claimed that he had received information from very important sources on the other side that Iran had stopped killing dissidents. Yeah, it's just been a bloodbath over there. We were told that the killing in Iran is stopping and there's no plans for actions, he said during a press conference in the Oval Office. No plan for executions or an execution. I told that on anti-regime protesters. The prime minister's office did not respond to the New York Times request for comment. On Wednesday, some U.S. personnel and aircraft were evacuated from the I don't know how they pronounce that. Al Udeid Air Base. I'm not sure. Qatar's international media office confirms that's the evacuation and a raised security warning level were called over fears the Islamic Republic of Iran target U.S. bases in the Gulf in retaliation if the U.S. strike. On Thursday, the security warning allowing some personnel and aircraft to return. Well, for a brief time, the airspace was shut down over there, so it was dicey for a moment. What I want to say about this is, some are concerned that the window of opportunity to actually get these despots them out has kind of passed, and of course, the protesters were hoping that Donald Trump would do something. It's a dicey situation with this because it's not quite the same as when Iran was directly threatening Israel. At that point, when it was found out that Iran was just within a week or two of actually getting a nuclear weapon, well, that was, you could justify going in there and doing the strikes that they did. But the United States wants to shy away from regime change. They have done that in the past, and it's not turned out well at all. So it does have to come from within. It's just unfortunate in this situation, and this is why I bring this up. Um, that in the prayer, this is truly such a demonic stronghold over that country. And our prayers not only are for the protection for these poor people that are trying to overthrow this behemoth of a satanic control, but we must do our part on this side to bind that satanic control. If it will not, we know that the power, the principality of the powers of the air are controlling this and controlling through these people, these ayatollahs. They're just demonic. And so until we can rise up and talk about, in our prayers to bind these demons, cast them down, out. It's the strongholds over the gates of the territory, and Satan is still the prince of the power of the air. So he has authority to be there until we bind all of that and cast it out. And it's tough. It's just, you look at places like Haiti. How much money, how much time, how much has been poured into these areas? There's parts of the United States, money, time, effort has been poured into it. And it seems like it does nothing. It's still going into what you would call a hellhole, for a lack of a better term. Um, and so you have to sit back at a certain point and think there's something else going on here, besides just maybe a lack of funding or a lack of this or a lack of that. There is actually a demonic stronghold. And there are certain gates into our world that these demonic creatures come out and have control. And we need to do a better job. We have to do it in our own lives. We have to bind the demonic attack against us. We've talked over and over again about how Rabbi said, take authority over that 10 yards around you. And so it's for the faint of heart. If you get in the battle, you can get struck. But we need to possibly. I know yesterday they had a prayer vigil at noon. It was Franklin Graham and some others, I guess, had gotten together. I didn't know about it, but they were asking for prayer and prayer for the world. We need to do, I guess, a little better job of getting the word out to everyone. So maybe that we could join together in a better situation. But just, it's what we only, if we can do this in our prayers, um, and be specific, not just a scatter shot of like, oh Lord, just protect everyone. No, we do need to start targeting things against these demonic strongholds. And we target against Iran. And the people there, obviously, they've tried to get out of it. They tried to fight. Their economy is completely collapsed. They have no water in Tehran. Uh, it takes, I mean, millions of their currency to make maybe just $1. And so
their whole life and livelihoods have been completely just, I mean, sacrificed for this demonic regime to fund its terrorist proxies. They've taken the money from the people and they're shipping it out to Hezbollah and Hamas and to try to keep their terrorist regime going. So, again, like I said, it's demonic. And China showing its true colors because, according to Breitbart News, they backed Iran against the protests, right? Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi issued a robust defense of the murderous Iranian regime on Thursday, warning America to not impose the law of the jungle by supporting massacre protesters during conversation with his Iranian counterpart. Wang, the Chinese Foreign Ministry, confirmed on Thursday a conversation with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in the context of 2 weeks of deadly protests in the country triggered by massive inflation, barely livable conditions in major cities such as Tehran, and an expected tax hike at the end of the Islamic calendar year to sustain the Iranian terror regime. Adding insult to injury, right? The government has responded to the protests, which have explicitly called for an end to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's leadership, with a torrent of violence killing thousands of people. Some estimates by human rights groups suggest as many as 20,000 people have been killed since the protests erupted on December 30th. The Chinese Communist Party maintained a stranglehold on power for over 70 years, has a similar track record of mass murdering protesters. Birds of a feather, right? They're flocking together. Most prominently following the pro democracy protests of the 1980s that concluded with the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Rather than addressing the protests, Wang commented on American President Donald Trump's assurances to Iranian protesters that help is on its way. The Treasury Department has since imposed a new round of sanctions on Iran, already significantly sanctioned as a state sponsor of terrorism, and a 25% tariff on countries that do business with Iran, which prominently includes China. Yeah, China likes the oil from there. China opposes the use or threat of force in international relations, opposes imposing one's own will on others, and opposes a return to the law of the jungle, the Chinese propaganda newspaper Global Times paraphrase. Well, isn't that rich, right? Wang also reportedly offered optimism that the regime would pull through and crush the overwhelming popular opposite country to its continued existence. According to the South China Morning Post, Araghchi told Wang that the protesters were not representative of the true Iranian people and incited by external forces, a claim that Tehran has made repeatedly, but not corroborated with any evidence. Yeah, they're calling the people in there that were uprising, they're calling them terrorists. The terrorists are calling them, and that isn't that what Satan does? He accuses you of doing the very thing that he is doing, right? We hope the Iranians overcome the current difficulties and uphold stability in the country, Mao said. We oppose external interference in the other countries, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what he has to say. Chinese Communist Party has not condemned the killing of the protesters in Iran. Oh, no. But rather vocally condemned the Trump administration's imposing the 25% tariff on countries that do business with Iran. Oh, well, that's what they're worried about, right? So anyway, we know where they stand, don't we? Nationwide protests challenging Iran's theocracy appeared to be smothered Thursday. A regime shut the country off from the world and escalated a bloody crackdown that activists say killed thousands. And this is coming out of, where is this story coming from? I copied it, but I didn't seem to get, I think it's the Times of Israel. The nationwide protests, it says here in Tehran, witnesses say recent mornings saw no new signs of bonfires lit the night before or debris on the streets. The sound of gunfire, which had been intense for several nights, has faded. Meanwhile, Iranian state media announced wave after wave of arrests by authorities targeting those it calls terrorists, and also apparently looking for Starlink satellite internet dishes, the only way to get videos and images out to the internet. Since January 8th, we saw a full fledged war, and anybody who was in the gathering gathering since then is a criminal, according to Justice Minister Amin Hussein Rahimi. There's nothing justice about him, nor minister, right? Uh, so it says, but there are multiple indications that the threat of mass executions after the protests is leading. Iranian state media on Thursday reported that Irfan Soltani, 26, a man who was due to be executed, would not be given the death sentence. U.S. President Donald Trump said he has been told that killings in the regime's crackdown were subsiding. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Wednesday that there would not be any hanging today or tomorrow. Oh, but what about the next day? That's my question. Not today or tomorrow. Hmm. He said that the regime was back in full control. And I mean, in many ways, I don't doubt it. The activity following days of speculation over whether Trump would follow through on threats to strike Iran in response to the killings of thousands of protesters. It's about the easing of killings may have implied a hold off on military action, even as the U.S. evacuated some of personnel from a military base in Qatar. And they closed that. The Iran closed its airspace to commercial flights for hours on Wednesday night, but reopened it Thursday morning. An apparent receding of chances for a strike prompted a fall in oil prices. Of course, we think that there's possibly anywhere from 3,000 to 12,000 killed at least. There are serious and ongoing concerns regarding Soltani's life. In an interview with Fox News, Araghchi said, I think that was with Brett Baer, said on Wednesday that there is no plan by Iran to hang people today or tomorrow. Like I said, and he says there is no plan for hanging at all. Hanging is out of the question, he added. Really? There's must be some amazing background negotiating going on here, right? Early Wednesday, Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ajay, Iran's judiciary chief, had said that the government must act quickly to punish more than 18,000 people who have been detained through rapid trials and executions. Yeah, now there's the truth. That's what they really want to do, and that's how they keep their control. They just murder people. If we could just get that Iranian guard but they're too high on the power that they have, so they're willing to go along and do this. They get many perks. So they're not going to upset their apple cart and go against the heads of the regime. They're part of it. And so tensions escalated on Wednesday as Iran said it had warned neighbors it would hit American bases in the region in the event of the U.S. strikes. Now, what I think is interesting here, like I said, it's a more complicated situation. When, like I said, Trump targeted Iran when they were going to make a nuclear weapon. That was on the world stage. It was understandable. It was justified. I think even Saudi Arabia applauded Trump for doing that, for going in there and taking the strikes and taking out the nuclear facilities. When Trump went into Venezuela and extracted or had the military go in and extract Maduro, that was a rogue regime. That guy, they had elections. Somebody else won, but Maduro just took over. So he was not really recognized as the legitimate head. And he was in cahoots with China, with Russia, with Iran, and producing all of the drugs and weapons and whatever else going on in Venezuela, in cahoots also with Colombia. So you could say that that was justified, although people in our own government were not even going along with that. They didn't seem to, they weren't backing the president up with that, but he had more legitimate standing there. In this case, for the world to see the United States go in and change a regime, there's really that's just not something that the United States really does. If you've got somebody like Hitler that had gone in and exterminated all of these people, well, yes, we had to do something about that. We're sitting on the edge of that. If Iran decides to go ahead and execute all of these people, then we could say, well, they're acting like Hitler. and we would have a stance here. But they said that here that Trump, his comments on Wednesday led to oil prices to retreat from multi-month highs and gold eased from a record peak on Thursday. That he says it was possible the government in Tehran could fall due to the protests, but in truth, any regime can fail. He says whether it fails or not, it's going to be an interesting period of time. But it says Trump told top national security aides that he wanted any military action against Iran to deal a swift and decisive blow to the regime while not triggering an extended conflict that lasts for weeks or months or even years. And that, I believe, is the crux of the problem here. You're not dealing with just one guy like Maduro, right? It's a different situation here. You've got a whole military backing up um, these terrorists in control at the top. And so it's a little bit more complicated than that. And they do have nuclear type weapons. I mean, they're very close. They still have their enriched uranium. This is a difficult thing. Citing a U.S. official and people familiar with the matter, the broadcaster said that Trump's advisors had not been able to guarantee that the Islamic Republic would swiftly fall if struck by the United States, and also cited concerns that they don't have the military assets in place across the Middle East to defend against an Iranian response. I think that this is the main problem here. Therefore, if Trump does decide to attack, he could initially greenlight more limited strikes on Iran while keeping open the possibility of later escalation, according to the report, which described the situation as quickly evolving and stressed that no decision had been made. The sources quoted in the report emphasized, however, that Trump is prepared to follow through on his repeated pledge in Iran on Thursday to discuss regional developments and ways to support security and stability in the region, Saudi state media reported. And Turkey's top diplomat on Thursday called for dialogue of the crisis. So anyway, it's a more complicated scene. So we have seen that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called for Trump to scale things back. Don't do anything yet. It seems also that officials from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman have worked behind the scenes to diffuse tensions. So they don't really want something to really go on between the United States and Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump informed Tehran that the U.S. would not attack and asked it to exercise restraint as well. Pakistani English language newspaper Dawn reported Thursday afternoon, citing Iranian ambassador to Pakistan Reza Amiri Moghadam. On Wednesday evening, Trump said that he had been informed that the killings in Iran's crackdown on nationwide protests were subsiding. We were told killings in Iran is stopping and that there's no plan for execution. We talked about that. Lindsey Graham tried to deny that he's backing down from striking the Iranian regime. I wouldn't say that Trump backs down. He just holds keeps his powder dry, right? He just holds back a bit, you know. Um, but Trump is not he doesn't want to go to war. He does like to do things like when he got the opportunity to take out Solomon. Was it the guy that he took out um, in Iran? Soleimani, I think is his name. It was a quite quick thing. Even what Israel did in taking out a lot of the leadership and all of that, and really setting things back in Iran by taking out all their scientists and all of their nuclear people. Very precision marks, and that's what I think Trump is trying to figure out here. Again, another thing to put your prayers to. Prayers for divine leadership to President Trump, that he works out. I mean, the Holy Spirit reveals to him exactly the moves that he should make. All right. On Thursday morning, exiled Iranian Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi said that after the regime in Iran falls and free Iran rises, the country would immediately recognize Israel, normalize U.S. relations, aim to broaden the Abraham Accords into the Cyrus Accords to unite Iran, Israel, and the larger Arab world. And that's a key thing because I heard somebody in Iran saying that they want to segue from this terrorist situation to becoming more of a Cyrus nation with Israel. Relations with the United States will be normalized, and our friendship with America and her people will be restored, he said in a video posted on X. The state of Israel will be recognized immediately. We pursue the expansion of the Abraham Accords into the Cyrus Accords, bringing together a free Iran, Israel, and the Arab world. Beginning his statement, which he addressed to all our friends around the world, Pahlavi said, Iran, which is under the yoke of the Islamic Republic, is popularly associated with terrorism, extremism, and poverty. But the real country, which existed before the Islamic regime took power, is beautiful, peaceful, loving, and flourishing. I don't know about his. This man seems to be very nice. I don't know about the original Shah of Iran. Exactly. This is the Iran that will eventually rise again from the ashes of the Islamic Republic, he said. Pahlavi said the new Iran would end the country's nuclear program and cease support for terrorist organizations, which it would work to confront and combat drug trafficking, organized crime, and extreme Islamism. Iran will act as a friend and a stabilizing force in the region, and it will be a responsible partner in global security. Citing Iran's oil and gas reserves, Pahlavi said it would become a transparent, responsible, and predictable global energy supplier. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Again, add it to your prayers that, and I'm not sure Mr. Pahlavi would be the one who would head things up. I don't know. I don't know how much the true Iranian people would support him, but I know that he has. It seems he has very good intentions. That he would love to see his country return to a situation like this. Money laundering will be confronted, he added. Organized corruption will be dismantled. Public institutions will have answered to the people. Pahlavi lauded the Iranian people, educated and modern, with a global diaspora that would power the country's untapped economic potential. This is not an abstract vision, he said. It is a practical one, grounded in national interest, stability, and cooperation. To achieve this, now's the time to stand with the Iranian people. The fall of the Islamic Republic and the establishment of a secular democratic government in Iran will not only restore dignity to my people, it will benefit the region and the world. Pahlavi's comments come as Iran nears the third week of protests, which the ruling regime has responded to with brutal crackdowns. And of course, we reported that. I mean, it's very hard to know the numbers, but we know that there were so many protests, and I think in over 117 cities across Iran, in provinces around Iran, and we just don't know how many people were brutally massacred in this. Trump has vowed to support the protesters in Iran. Trump has expressed doubt about whether Pahlavi would be able to gain enough support to lead the country if the regime fell. He seems very nice, but I don't know how he'd play within his own country, he told Reuters. And we really aren't up to that point yet. I don't know whether or not his country would accept his leadership. And certainly if they would, that would be fine with me. So, like I said, we really don't know. Now, we always enjoy Melanie Phillips and her comments on matters. She's a British journalist and a broadcaster, and she has written here in the Jewish News Syndicate. She goes, the stupendous courage of the Iranian people has inspired awe at this massive display of unquenchable human spirit. Hundreds of thousands of Iranian demonstrators literally walked into the guns in their struggle for freedom from the monstrous Islamic regime. It's true. At the time of writing, it is unclear whether U.S. President Donald Trump will come to their aid as he promised, as apparently planned U.S. attacks on Wednesday night was reportedly called off at the last minute. The enormous risks of such an operation may mean that it will take place when all the ducks are finally in a row. It's hard to believe that Trump would be happy to be seen to have been played by the regime and thus leave it in place. He must be aware that this wouldn't merely be a stunning betrayal of the Iranian people. It wouldn't merely torch his own reputation. The resulting weakening of America and strengthening of an axis of the evil in the world would be a dire outcome. For decades, the West has refused to and deal with the threat imposed by Iran. Just as in the 1930s, a refusal to grasp the true extent of the danger posed by Nazism led to the Holocaust and a terrible world war, so the eventual reckoning with the mullahs is turning out to be far more difficult and deadly than if the Iranian jihadi bullet had been bitten years ago. Whatever may happen over the next few days or weeks, the result of this vacillation is that many thousands of Iranians have now been murdered while the world did no more than wring its hands, and some haven't even done that. The stunning indifference of so much of the West to Iranians' heroism and the vicious savagery of the regime reflects the persistent inability of Western nations to understand the stakes. And that's rooted, in turn, in a moral perversity to which much of the West has succumbed. Um, I think that our friend Amir Sarfati has has a saying: "No Jews, no news." It seems that nobody has any kind of they don't seem to get angry if this happens, but if it excuse me, if it happened with where somehow Israel was involved, oh, then people start protesting. Free Palestine, they say. Well, this is a true uh, terrible regime that has murdered people. It's barely a whimper, right? Out in most of the media, in most uh, of the people that usually are showing up to protest at every corner, right? Unsay this was by Ken Martin, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Considering the massacres by Iran's regime and the disputed killing of anti-ICE protester Renee Good by a U.S. law enforcement officer last week, Martin equated the two. Ugh. If comparing the U.S. to Iran makes you angry, ask why, he wrote. Killing protesters, crushing dissent, kidnapping and disappearing legal citizens, ignoring courts, threatening critics, terrorizing communities. That's authoritarian behavior anywhere. Martin thus famed his own country and diminished the evil of the Iranian regime. She's right. His obtuse comparison reflected the general loss of moral compass in the West, the collapse of the distinction between right and wrong, and the insistence on moral equivalence. You know, good becomes evil and evil becomes good, right? This empowers bad people and punishes their victims. With the post colonial narrative that the Muslim world is the victim of the West and therefore can never do wrong, while Israel and America are oppressors and therefore can never do right, it's produced Western complicity with Islamism. It's made it blind to the ways in which jihadi Islam is steadily dominating society, as well as distorting its response to anti Semitism and even to the Islamic murder of Jews. This has been spectacularly demonstrated by the new legislation introduced by Australia's government under Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to combat anti Semitism, hate, and extremism in the wake of the December 14th attack by Islamist terrorists against Jews celebrating Hanukkah on Bondi Beach, in which 15 people were murdered. With startling perversity, this new law could criminalize Jews for identifying Muslims as being responsible for the atrocity against them. The mass murder of Christians would not constitute an offense, but Islamophobia may be punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And an exemption for religious texts could empower radical preachers to use the Quran and the Hadiths to promote murderous hatred of Jews, as some do now. In the storm of criticism that followed, Albanese, I guess, defended this exemption by appearing to falsely suggest that the Old Testament promoted hatred or called for the murder of others. So he managed to turn an ostensible protection against anti Semitism into an ignorant and prejudiced attack on the Hebrew Bible. Wow, huh? In Britain, which has long plunged down this rabbit hole, the police are now doing the Islamists' bidding. In Birmingham last November, the West Midlands Force decided at the behest of local Islamists to ban away fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv from attending their team's match with Aston Villa. It's now been revealed that they fabricated intelligence to obscure their own conclusion that the Israelis would be at risk of violence from armed local Muslims and instead stated falsely that the Muslims were at risk from the Maccabi fans. As Nick Timothy, a conservative member of parliament, has written, Britain is in danger of veering into something that should alarm us all: the surrender of the criminal justice system to the politics of the communalism. Islamic thugs and the mob know what they want and are determined to get it. Well, that's their goal, to establish Islamic law, Sharia law. And they're doing it by intimidation, right? Britain is an extreme outlier in this baleful process, but the refusal to confront the danger of Islamism led to the election of Zoran Mamdani as New York's mayor. Yes, it's happening here. Whose first act was to dismiss the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti Semitism and repeal an executive order put into place by his predecessor, Eric Adams, prohibiting boycotts of Israel. Eric Adams went to Israel right before he left office, and he had gone back and put a lot of these things in. And guess what? That's one of the first things Mamdani flipped over, right? Mamdani insists that he will protect the city's Jews, but while he has been speaking out against the recent torching of a synagogue in Mississippi and incidents of anti-Semitic graffiti in New York, and accepted the resignation of a high-level appointee who had pulled a trope about money-hungry Jews, he made it plain that he will not do the same for Jews who are seen to support Israel. We must distinguish between anti-Semitism and criticism of the Israeli government. See, that's the key thing they do there. They're just saying, we're just criticizing the Israeli government. But it's not mere criticism of Israel, but anti-Zionism, to which he himself subscribes by his refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Yeah, he's a Muslim. I keep saying his most attractive feature was that he's a socialist. But he is an anti-Semitic Muslim in charge now. The distinction between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is specious. It's only the Jewish people who are singled out as having no right to their own ancestral homeland. The very attempt to divide the Jewish homeland from the Jews, the people whose faith is centered in that land, is an attack on Judaism. In Britain, a Jewish member of parliament was barred from visiting a school in his Bristol constituency by Israel haters among the teachers and their union on the grounds that he is the vice chair of Labor Friends of Israel. This has caused widespread shock as an assault against the principles of education and parliamentary democracy, as well as against a Jewish politician. But no one should be surprised at all. In the United Kingdom, as in America, the education system, with some honorable exceptions, has been in the grip of teachers who are teaching school children through a Marxist lens that represents all human behavior as a struggle between the powerful and the powerless. They subscribe to the belief that the capitalist West is fundamentally oppressive and colonialist, that the Jews are behind capitalism, and that the state of Israel is therefore colonialist and oppressive. That's a true statement there. That is as concise as you'll hear it said. The belief of the leftists that the capitalist West is fundamentally oppressive and colonistic, and that the Jews are behind capitalism, and that the state of Israel is therefore colonialistic and oppressive. They think the United States is colonialist and oppressive, right? Generations of this brainwashing have resulted in American sympathy for Israelis hitting an all-time low, falling last year to 46%, the low in almost 25 years of Gallup's annual tracking of this measure. Yeah, I mean, where would that? It has to be. It comes from the schools. It comes from everything that has been taken over by this, right? And in Britain, polling by Stand With Us UK found that 29% of British students see Hamas's October 7th pogrom as an understandable act of resistance, with 40% believing that those publicly supporting Israel should expect abuse on campus. Evil is being called good, good is being called evil. It's clear that the Palestine cause is a portal to obliterate Israel by suborning Western elites to the cause. The desire to obliterate Israel is a portal to the desire to obliterate Jews. And the desire to obliterate both Israel and the Jews is a portal to the destruction of the West through a broader and deeper loss of moral compass and civilizations. In the Islamic regime in Iran would be a way of resetting the West's moral compass. Enabling it to survive would leave that compass broken and the West in a continuing free fall. But you see, this is why, and this last paragraph here is why, I mean, you would say, well, why are the Muslims joining up with all of these radicals, on the college campuses? And don't the radicals on the college campuses know that the Muslims would, in their own countries, kill them for their lifestyles, right? But they have right now, have a similar goal. They, like she explained here, they're trying the loss of the moral compass, and they're wanting to take down the West because it's this colonialist. Islam wants to destroy Judaism, Christianity. So they've got a similar goal, right? Makes sense. Very good article from Melanie Phillips. It's if you'd like to read more on that. She always does excellent job. Things into a concise. She very eloquent these things. I do have a newsletter from Amir Tsarfati. Right now, he is in Davao in the Philippines, I guess. And he's in Manila's southern suburb. He will be in Manila's southern suburb of Albang, and he's going to teach at different churches there. But he does have, and he um, uh, has his talk here about what is going on around the world. He recorded 2 episodes, he also says, of the 700 Club in that area. And so maybe, who knows, it might work its way into the CBN broadcasting here in the United States. I don't know. But he's got his topics here, Mid East and beyond. So let's see what Amir Tsarfati has to say this week. Of course, he lives in Jerusalem, but he is, of course, traveling around the world and speaking. But of course, he has his connections and can bring us information that maybe we can't get anywhere else. He says Iran is burning. What's happening in Iran is the most important event taking place in the world right now. As such, it will be the news focus of this edition. I will break it down into 4 sections: the protests, Israel's response, America's response, and finally my take on the situation. And of course, constantly updating on his Telegram channel. That's how I stay informed. I follow Amir on Telegram. He also has an Instagram account. So if you're on Instagram and you want to follow Amir Tsarfati, I don't know if he goes by his name there or if he goes by Behold Israel, but Behold Israel is his ministry. Amir Tsarfati is his name. He says, of course, the protests in Iran. The long-term simmering unrest reached full boil 2 weeks ago, and Iran has been on fire ever since. Protesters took to the streets marching against the Islamic regime and its failed economy, broken infrastructure, and violent suppression of critics. Immediately, police and military forces were dispatched to put down the demonstrations. Their heavy-handed tactics only blew oxygen on the flames, causing the protests to spread in scope and intensity. The police responded in kind and were very soon using live ammunition to suppress the activists. That's when the bodies began to pile up. First tens, then hundreds, then thousands. As of now, more than 12,000 protesters have lost their lives and countless more have been wounded. The hospitals can't keep up with the wounded, but in some places they don't have to. In Tehran, there were reports that security forces are taking away gunshot victims as soon as they arrive, even prior to medical treatment. In Isfahan's Milad Hospital, forces from the Ministry of Intelligence conducted a raid during which they abducted several doctors who had treated those wounded during the protests. Thousands are being detained by the police, and people are starting to disappear from custody. I've been praying for the life of Irfan Soltani, a 26-year-old shopkeeper, was scheduled to be executed January 14th. For now, it appears that his sentence has been stayed, but that is a minor victory overall. His death would have simply been the first official execution. Police forces and military have been executing people without ceasing over the past days. Where are the protesters over this brutality and these deaths? It took until 2 days ago for the United Nations Human Rights Commission to finally condemn Iran's actions. Leftist activists and politicians have either kept silent, provided tepid statements against Iran's murdering of their citizens. Compare this to the vitriolic outrage that would be voiced by these same people if a Gazan simply got nicked while getting a shave at a barbershop. If these hate mongers and anti Semites, both the professional and the weekend hobbyist, are truly all about protecting the rights of the oppressed, there should be marches in support of the Iranian protesters in every city in America, but there aren't, because no Jews, no news. Yeah, he said it. I said it earlier. That's true. So far, the protests are maintaining their intensity, but that can only last for so long without outside help. The Islamic regime shut down the internet a week ago, then shut down Elon Musk's Starlink after he sent it in to restore outside access. But that didn't stop Musk. His brainiacs at SpaceX found a way to reactivate the service, and Elon is offering it free of charge in the country. Thank you, Elon Musk. If the Ayatollahs do survive this onslaught, they will still be left with a broken country. 5 Iranian banks are on the verge of collapse, according to the Wall Street Journal. As for their currency, it has finally bottomed out, with 1 Iranian rial being worth, okay, you have to put a 0.000001 US dollar. I'm not going to even go to one. I guess it's 1 millionth. All right, meaning that it is utterly worthless. That's no concern for Ayatollah Ali Khomeini, however, whose personal fortune, the guy with the turban, right, is valued at $250 to $300 billion, or about 3 times more than the national budget of Iran. Threats have been flying, and this is Israel's response to Iran. Threats have been flying back and forth between Tehran and Jerusalem. The Ayatollahs desperately need something to distract the people from their hatred of them, so they're trying to direct it at Israel. Israel's response is essentially, bring it on. Just in case the Islamic regime is dumb enough to try something, Iron Dome batteries have been transferred to Jerusalem. Before acting, the mullahs need to consider the fact with a single strike, Israel can take out 2/3 of Iran's economy. Using just a handful of precision bombs on critical oil infrastructure sites, the IDF could destroy the final pillar from the country's economic foundation. Israel held action in reserve during the June war. If Iran attacks, that forbearance may likely come to an end. The United States' response to Iran: from the beginning, conservative voices in America have spoken out in support of the protesters. Senator Ted Cruz said, "I am proud to stand with the heroes in Iran who don't want an Islamic dictator oppressing them anymore." Eliminate Khomeini, encouraged Senator Lindsey Graham, while promising the protesters that help is on the way. The president himself has been very vocal in his support of the anti-regime demonstrators and in his warnings to the government agencies that are shooting. It says here, the president himself has been very vocal in his support to the anti-regime demonstrators and in his warnings to the government agencies that are shooting them down. Okay. Many believe that a U.S. attack on Iran is imminent. Forces at Al Udeid, I guess, air base in Qatar have been ordered to leave immediately, and Americans have been warned against traveling anywhere in the Middle East. When asked what he might have planned for Iran, Donald Trump's standard answer is, watch and find out. What does that mean? Recently, a senior official told the New York Times that the goal of any attack in Iran is to send a message to Khomeini over the killing of the protesters, as opposed to overthrowing the government. What are the potential targets for a U.S. strike in Iran? Military targets related to Iran's ballistic missile and nuclear programs, including all the missile sites hidden under the ground. The Basij, which is often called the morality police, one of the 5 branches of the IRGC, it is responsible for paramilitary support, internal security, law enforcement, and ensuring obedience to Islamic law. These were primarily responsible for violently suppressing dissent and the protests. So if you want to know what to pray against the Basij. It's spelled Basij, phonetically spelled. So government facilities such as the Parliament, state television and radio headquarters, and the presidential palace. Critical infrastructure, including oil refineries, oil depots, airports, and seaports, again, things that could be struck. Targeted elimination of regime leadership, including senior IRGC commanders, like Soleimani was, right? The supreme leader, the president, and the member of the Assembly of Experts and the Guardian Council. If President Trump chooses not to target the regime itself, he will focus on the military targets and the Basij. If his ultimate goal is regime change, he will need to take down both those groups, as well as destroying the government facilities and targeting all the key leaders for elimination. If he wants to go scorched earth on Iran, he will target all five. Although Venezuela was a smaller, easier target, the U.S. showed through that operation that it has the strength and strategic acumen to do whatever it chooses to do. It will be up to Trump and his advisors to decide what is the best option. By all accounts, it appears that an attack of some sort is coming very soon. As I predicted earlier, it's not if, but when. The thing I will say about, I think that the situation in Venezuela was in the works for a long time. They knew exactly what they were going to do. I'm not sure if that's the same case for the situation in Iran. And you know, I would have no idea. But Venezuela was in our hemisphere. Iran is not. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Another lesson learned in Venezuela is that Trump is not focused on regime change. Reza Pahlavi, son of the last Shah of Iran and currently the crown prince, is waiting in the wings for a shot at leading the country. He has a plan that will end Iran's support of terrorism, confront the vast criminal elements in the country, normalize relations with the United States, and recognize immediately the state of Israel. As wonderful as that all sounds, it is unlikely that Trump will give him a shot. That is disappointing, but it is also a recognition of real life. Based on practical considerations and existing circumstances, Pahlavi's vision for a throwback 1970s style Iran is somewhat pie in the sky. While its ideological, moral, and ethical principles are appealing, it doesn't mesh with the realpolitik of today's Iran. Now, this is Amir's view on Iran. Decapitation or capitulation? Does Trump lop off the Islamic head of the regime or continue to exert maximum pressure to force behavioral change? Any viable strategy must take into account the nature of the Ayatollah's regime. Pride, ideology, and survival define it. An outcome perceived as outright defeat would be intolerable. Any loss must therefore be framed, however implausibly, as victory. The regime will be unable to accept it or survive internally. Scripture reminds us that pride goes before destruction, yet pride also blinds leaders to reality. At the same time, both the regime and the United States would sell the world the same argument. The need to avoid chaos, civil war, and the complete disintegration of a country composed of many ethnic, religious, and tribal minorities. The narrative will be stability over collapse, order over fragmentation. As a Bible believer teacher, this is Amir, right? I cannot ignore the biblical dimension of the current events. This is where the Israeli connection to the Iranian issue becomes unavoidable. The prophet Ezekiel describes a future war in which Persia, Iran, joins a coalition that comes against Israel, led by Gog of the land of Rosh. In this, Israel is shown not as not relying on any foreign ally, including America. The nation stands alone with only God by its side. Based on this biblically assured future, my humble assessment is that the Ayatollah's regime will exercise strategic patience rather than seeking to exacerbate the tension. A face-saving agreement will be made that will likely keep the regime in power, but will also give something to the protesters. Meanwhile, the Ayatollahs will wait for President Trump to leave the Oval Office before making its next move. That move will not be unilateral, but will occur as part of a broader coalition when another power leads the charge, and Iran followed a pointed role. Geopolitics explains the maneuvering. Scripture explains the moment, and God explains the outcome. Having said all that, no one more than myself would be happier to be wrong in my prediction. I would love to see the Ayatollah's regime removed, and with it, the disappearance of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. The Middle East could truly use a few years of peace. Well, it would be nice, wouldn't it? And so, and he goes on with his account of what's going on in his ministry. If you want to know about Amir Sarvati, just go to beholdisrael.org. He has a weekly newsletter that you can sign up for and give you those sorts of updates. Yeah, it, it is interesting. For the people there, you would wish that there could be a regime change, that there could be some sort of change on all of that. It just, who knows, right? It's unknown what could happen in all of that. I do know that Avi Abelo has had some very interesting things to say. I thought that I had posted something earlier about what Avi had said, but I don't see it handy. So I guess I'm going to have to like save that for another time if I find it. But Avi Abelo has a lot of interesting things to say out of Israel. And I could go. I follow him also on Telegram. This is our Telegram, the Telegram app, and he has something called the Pulse of Israel, and he's constantly talking about what, from an Israeli point of view, from somebody who really would love to see the reestablishment of Judea and Samaria. He has very much a lot of comments about this. So he has posted here today. The stage 2 for Gaza is live. The failure is inevitable, is what he teaches. And so he said, Gaza stage 2 peace, quote unquote, plan detached from reality only prolongs the war. And he said, yesterday, Steve Witkoff, speaking on behalf of President Donald Trump, unveiled phase 2 of a 20-point plan to end the Gaza conflict in a polished, well-intentioned, yet fundamentally disconnected from reality sort of way. The idea that a technocratic Palestinian Authority can replace Hamas in Gaza is detached from reality. The notion that Hamas will demilitarize through the international mechanisms is not policy, it is fantasy. Rebuilding Gaza for the very same population of jihadis who participated, supported, and celebrated the October 7th atrocities without a single Gazan coming forward with information about a hostage, even in exchange for a $5 million reward, is not humanitarianism, it is moral corruption. Praising regional mediators who have consistently enabled and protected Hamas may sound like progress in Washington, but to anyone who understands the Middle East, jihadi Islam, and the last century of Arab-Israeli conflict, it is a familiar and disastrous illusion. The core failure of this plan is not tactical, it is conceptual. It assumes Gaza's problem is administrative rather than ideological. It treats Hamas as a militia that can be disarmed rather than as what it is, a genocidal jihadi culture driven by a religious worldview, not material grievance. It imagines that a technocratic Palestinian Authority can govern Gaza after October 7th, as if mass murder, rape, and kidnapping were aberrations rather than expressions of belief. This fantasy has been tried repeatedly. Demilitarization has been promised before. International supervision has been attempted before. Reconstruction funds have flowed before. Each time the result was not peace, but rearmament, deeper radicalization, and the next massacre. From what I'm understanding right now, Hamas is still uh, it's redoing its tunnels. They haven't destroyed all the tunnels in Gaza. And they're redoing all of that and hiding out in there. And they made it very clear the tunnels are for us. They said they're not for anything else. The tunnels are for Hamas. And so they're reconstituting what they can. The statement praises Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar for their indispensable mediation. Yet Sunni Qatar is Hamas's financial, and political patron besides Shia Iran. Turkey openly hosts Hamas leaders and acts like an enemy of Israel. Egypt assisted the buildup of Hamas and focuses on its own interests. Thanking these actors as guarantors of Gaza's future only underscores how detached this process is from Israeli reality. Our enemies are not seeking coexistence, they're seeking time. And I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, we've got 3 more years with Donald Trump, and then they're going to bide the time. They're not on any kind of timetable. They're going to wait this out, right? The United States now expects Hamas to comply fully. Expectations are not strategy. Hamas does not comply because Hamas does not compromise. It exploits ceasefires to rebuild tunnels, replenish weapons, indoctrinate children, and prepare the next attack. Threatening serious consequences after the atrocities of October 7th is not deterrence, it is repetition. But the plan ignores deeper truths that make its failure inevitable. First, it ignores the historical reality that the Palestinian national movement was never primarily about statehood, but about destroying the Jewish state. Modern Palestinian nationalism did not emerge as a grassroots liberation movement seeking coexistence. Its founding political architect, Haj Amin al Husseini, openly aligned with Adolf Hitler, broadcasting Nazi propaganda across the Arab world and recruiting Muslims into SS units. After World War II, this same movement was repackaged by Soviet intelligence and embraced by communist and anti-colonial frameworks with active support from the KGB to give genocide Jew hatred a modern revolutionary veneer. At no point was the central aim the creation of a peaceful Palestinian state alongside Israel. The goal was always the delegitimization of the Jew, the legitimization of terror against the Jew, and the elimination of Jewish sovereignty in Israel. Any peace plan built on a different assumption is built on fiction. Second, the Trump plan, pretends that the Palestinian Authority is a viable alternative to Hamas. It is not. The Palestinian Authority differs from Hamas only in tactics and presentation, not in ultimate objectives. It glorifies terrorists as martyrs, pays salaries to convicted murderers, educates children to see Jews as illegitimate occupiers, praised the October 7th atrocities, and rejects Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Hamas wages jihad openly. The Palestinian Authority uses it diplomatically, legally, and educationally. Replacing Hamas with the PA officials in Gaza would not be the end. Would not end the war. It would entrench it. Third, and perhaps most dangerously, the plan clings to the fantasy that Gaza can be re educated. It reflects a profound Western misunderstanding of jihadi Islam. This is not social deviation that can be corrected with curriculum reform or economic incentives. It is a 1400-year-old ideological system that explicitly seeks global domination in the name of Allah and sanctifies violence as a religious duty against all kafirs, infidels. It is spreading across the world precisely because it is uncompromising, absolutist, and totalizing. There is no re educating such an ideology. History shows that there is only one way to deal with it: defeat it, dismantle its power, and make clear unequivocally that those who embrace it will pay a price and will fail. This is why the plan's language about demilitarization rings hollow. Demilitarization without ideological defeat is a pause, not a solution. Reconstruction without implementing Trump's Gaza immigration plan is a subsidy for the next year. Let Trump's envoys continue to promote peace plans and make Western capitals feel productive. They will fail for the same reason their predecessors failed. They refused to confront the ideological nature of the enemy of Islam, right? There is only one realistic path forward: total Israeli control of Gaza, with no jihadi Muslims remaining to threaten Israeli civilians in the future. Not international trusteeships, not Palestinian technocrats, not recycled fantasies of modernization. Real peace must be rooted in truth. And the first truth that must be acknowledged is this: Gaza belongs to the Jewish people, period. Real peace can then begin when the threat is removed, not managed. Gaza must be fully demilitarized by Israel, permanently secured by Israel, and fundamentally transformed by removing the jihadi population that has chosen endless war. That is why the only serious proposal on the table is Trump's large scale voluntary Gaza immigration, rather than endless reconstruction conferences that rebuild terror infrastructure. The uncomfortable truth is this: peace plans that ignore ideology, history, and the enemy's stated goals do not shorten wars, they prolong them. Gaza is not a humanitarian puzzle to be solved by committees. It is a battlefield shaped by belief. One day, everyone is invited to visit me in my beachfront property on the beautiful and peaceful Mediterranean coastline of Gaza, where Jewish communities once again will thrive, not because of technocratic councils or international guarantees, but because reality was finally acknowledged. If you stay with us for Shabbat, we will sing together Karibon, the beloved Shabbat song written in the 17th century by Rabbi Yisrael Nahara, who served at the time as the chief rabbi of Gaza City. Gaza is Jewish land historically and morally, and denying that truth, along with the truth about our jihadi enemies, has only delayed peace. Those who persist in these illusions are not advancing peace, they are standing in its way. These are the times of Gula redemption. I don't know how to say that properly. It is time for us to stand up for the truth and for our Jewish identity, and to reject the lies of political correctness that deny reality and obscure the truth. Am Yisrael Chai. P.S. What a disgrace that the Trump administration is even launching stage 2 without threatening Hamas, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt to ensure that phase 1 is completed first. Hamas has still not returned our final hostage held in Gaza, Ron Gavili. Now, I'm presenting this to you. He is a true Israeli Jew, and he is expressing. I would say this: the mistake happened way back. They turned that land over, um, and unfortunately, when that happened, and the Jewish people were taken out of Gaza, they didn't even leave bodies buried there. They took the Israeli bodies out of Gaza. That's where it's all started. They, as I said, if we continue to give in to this lie that, oh, there was an indigenous Palestinian people and the Jews have taken over their land, if we have gone along with this and perpetuated this lie, and this is the outcome. So I just wanted you to see the sides of that, and of course, wherever the Islamic regime puts its foot, anybody involved with the Muslim Brotherhood, anyone involved with the Islamism, where they put their foot, they claim it for Allah, and they have no intention of giving it back. And as he said, they will not give up. They have to be defeated. I have heard this week that in Texas, the governor has officially recognized that CARE is a terrorist organization. And so I didn't have a chance before the show to look all of that up, but Governor Abbott has really tried to go and speak out and go against the establishment of the city of Epic there, that they wanted to establish a Muslim conclave. They have, of course, in Texas, the rapid growth of these not that they've put up all of these uh, what am I trying to say? What they build their places. They put like over 43 in the Dallas Fort Worth area of their mosques that they built up there. Supposedly, they want to institute all of these educational groups. And they're infiltrating everything: the political system, the educational system, and this is their goal: is to establish their Sharia law. They will not. It's they're hiding under the guise that it is a religion, but as I've said before, they do not separate church and state. They don't separate mosque and state. They they are together, and they're using this as a cover for conquest. So this is what we've got to be aware of, and unfortunately, they've gotten a very, very strong foothold in Israel. Um, that land should not be the West Bank, called the West Bank. It is Judea and Samaria. So, and now I think I am down to my stories of my archaeological stories. Had a busy week this week. And so the show might be just a little shorter tonight. Again, like I said, we were having a little bit of trouble. So we're not right now on Rumble, but our friend Jim, who's currently still in the hospital, he's going to work on that and make sure that he gets that posted eventually to Rumble, or eventually figure out how to tell me how to do it. So we should have been broadcasting live on Rumble tonight, but we have a little bit of technical difficulty. So we have one story here that came from the Jerusalem Post, and this was actually dated January 1st. I didn't see it before today. So, as I said, I had a busy weekend. Got to see a friend of mine, Sarah. I thank her for her service. The last time I saw her was 26 years ago when we turned our tassel at St. Louis University, and I went off into the weather world in television, and she went into the Missouri Air National Guard, and she retired from the military, and very proud of her as a lieutenant colonel. And she has retired and now can go, doesn't have to go on that one weekend a month. And actually, it's not just one weekend, but many times away from her family. But now her family gets her back. So, like I said, thank you, Sarah, for your service. And it was nice. Um, but it's been kind of a challenge this week to keep up with everybody in the hospital and find out what's going on there. I had to help a friend today who has been in the hospital. Like I said, 2026, the end of 2025, 26 has been very challenging. She needed my help because they're going to be doing a big shindig here in town, and she needed help with a crew for decorating because she's not supposed to lift anything. I saw lifting some things today, but they weren't heavy. But I was like, "Are you sure you can lift that?" Yeah. Anyway, just keeping an eye on her while all that was going on. So I'm tired. So like I said, we may end the show here a little early. But this, like I said, was coming from the Jerusalem Post. Pottery fragments found near Ararat renew the debate over the site of Noah's Ark. So it says here, pottery fragments unearthed near the Darupiner Formation on Turkey's Mount Ararat. Actually, not on the Mount of Ararat. It's actually on a place called Mount Judy, within the mountains of Ararat. They've reignited debate over the Biblical Ark's final resting place. Professor Farouk Kaya of Agri Ibrahim Sinsen University stated on Friday, according to UK-based news site Metro, the shards exposed during road work by the, oh my goodness, Bayasit site in Agri province indicate human presence between 550 5,500 BC and 3,000 BC, according to Kaya. He urged authorities to safeguard the area amid reports of visitors moving stones and marked fragments, which our researchers say could damage an important archaeological and religious heritage site. The material was discovered close to the outline long by Ark enthusiasts as the boat-shaped Darupiner Mound. Kaya said the dating of the ceramics broadly aligns with traditional estimates for the era associated with Noah. Kaya warned that tourists have been taking stones and other materials, including pieces bearing markings, and called for formal protection of the formation and its surroundings. This formation and its surroundings must be protected, and the removal of stones, rocks, or similar material from the site must be prevented. A little information to him. They've been doing that for centuries at that place. He's blessed to have found anything, really. The site of Noah's Ark was first identified in 1959. Uh, it was identified before that, but the first in our time, it was identified in 1959 by Turkish captain İlhan Darupiner. The structure drew wider attention after rains and earthquakes eroded surrounding soil, revealing its ship-like outline, its proximity to Mount Ararat, Turkey's highest peak, and dimensions which some say echo the Genesis or Bereshit, have kept the site in the spotlight for decades. The Torah recounts that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, not just on Mount Ararat, but on the mountains of Ararat after 150 days of floodwaters. Advocates note that biblical cubic measurements roughly correspond to the formation scale, though many scholars remain cautious pending peer-reviewed excavation results. If you read, what's his name's book? Rick, I can't remember. Anyway, I can't say it right now. But anyway, he's been there. He said that they've done, what you would call the where they it's not sonar, but something similar that they go in there and they know that there are cavities under there under this formation, which would coincide with the levels of the ark. Um, what's his name? But anyway, he's written a book, and I will look it up here in just a moment. But scientific interest intensified in recent years. A joint Mount Ararat and Noah's Ark research team established in 2022 by Agri Ibrahim Sesen University and Istanbul Technical University collected rock and soil samples for library analysis. Researchers said the results suggest sustained human life in the region from the Chalcolithic period onward, reinforcing arguments that the area could match the biblical setting. The latest pottery finds, Kaya said, underscore the need for controlled research and site protection. He added that removing even small marked stones risks erasing evidence that could clarify the region's ancient human footprint. And so, what is the name of the book that it was? It's a long title, and I've told you about it before. Rick Renner. Rick Renner, but I can't remember the name of his book. But anyway, it's an amazing book that talks all about the ark, and it was amazing to hear him talk all about going to that area. I'm not so sure if he picked up a rock or not, but he wrote this book, and if I could see it, there it is. If you can pick up this book, Fallen Angels, Giants, Monsters, and the World Before the Flood. I'll say it again. Rick Renner's book, Fallen Angels, Giants, Monsters, and the World Before the Flood. And his name is Rick Renner, spelled Renner. That is a fascinating book all about pre-flood and, of course, talking about the site of Noah's Ark. Because, like I said, he has been there, and it's pretty amazing what he got to see and find out by going there. So now, of course, like I said, we have a sad thing that has happened. The passing of archaeologist Gabriel Barkay. And they called him Gabby. He died on Sunday at the age of 81 after a long illness, and he is well known for his pioneering work on soil from the Temple Mount and for his discovery of one of the oldest fragments of the biblical text ever found. Quite an amazing archaeologist and researcher. Considered by many to be among the giants of his generation, Barkay's willingness to employ non traditional research methods and his maximalist approach to some issues in following the Bible as a historical source also drew criticism from some scholars. It's a great loss. He really left a very big void in the archaeology world, said archaeologist Zaki Driva, who worked side by side with Barkay for 2 decades in co-directing the Temple Mount Sifting Project. His approach is something that I don't think we will find in the next generation of archaeologists. Barkay was born in Hungary in 1944, where his family was hunted down by the Nazis. He moved to Jerusalem with his parents at the age of 6, and the city became his lifelong mission. He was like the top expert of archaeology of Jerusalem, but also in all aspects of the city's history, Driva told the Times of Israel in a phone interview. If you were with him in Jerusalem, he would tell you the story of every street and corner. Barkay pursued his degrees at Tel Aviv University and worked under the greatest founders of Israeli archaeology, including Yigael Yadin, Benjamin Mazar, and Yohanan Aharoni. So those are some of the biggest names, particularly the Mazar family. According to De Vere, Barkai had a prodigious memory, and could provide information on an endless number of artifacts, periods, events, and typologies on the spot. He was like a biblical archaeology and Jerusalem archaeology Google. Anyone who wanted to find information on a certain topic or item and could not find it would come and consult with him. Ultimately, it was this encyclopedic knowledge that brought the two together. De Vere had first met Barkai in 1998 while he was studying at Bar Ilan University and was impressed with the passion the late researcher revealed, not only for archaeological excavations and scientific results, but also for those behind them, their stories, and their personalities. He loved people, De Vere said. In his third year of studies, De Vere and a fellow student decided to conduct a small survey on a portion of some 9,000 tons of soil been illegally removed from the Temple Mount for the Muslims, the noble sanctuary, or the Haram al-Sharif, and dumped in the Kidron Valley as a result of an unauthorized large-scale construction project to build a subterranean mosque carried out by the northern branch of the Islamic movement. Now, how they ever got the equipment under there to do that, I'll never know. How they let them continue that, I'll never know. But they did. And they were, I don't know how they did it without collapsing everything. Um, it, they can be quite destructive. And again, like, rats in a tunnel, they wanted everything underground. We need help from professors to identify the date the finds, he said. At first, we did not approach Barkai. He was another generation, and it felt like we could not just go to him. We were intimidated. However, the young archaeologists soon understood that only someone with with Barkai's extensive expertise could provide insights into the nature of the objects they found. It's very difficult to date when you don't have the stratigraphy. And you deal with small fragments, De Vera said. We wanted more expertise. We gave Barkai a call and he invited us to his house. We spread the finds on his dining table and he was so excited. In the following years, Barkai worked to ensure that no construction work could be carried out on the Temple Mount without proper archaeological supervision, raising public awareness on the issue, and bringing it before the authorities. And it says here, he also wanted to make sure that the soil already removed would not go to waste. By 2004, Barkai and De Vere obtained Bar Ilan's recognition and limited funding to start sifting through the dirt. We had funding for just a few months, but after we started, we realized the great potential of what we were doing. The archaeologists began identifying hundreds of artifacts, including coins, bones, pottery fragments, seal impressions, and more in what soon became the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Unfortunately, when they went under there and they just dug everything out and tossed it, the problem is, they know approximately where it came from. They don't know exactly where it came from, so it makes it very hard to get an exact location on that things, and which is very crucial in archaeological work. So, as the team developed the innovative so-called wet sifting technique, which involved, among others, washing the dirt with a hose, the archaeologists were able to identify even more items. There is so much you can learn, data and information you can extract, said De Vere. On this day, the Temple Mount Sifting Project has yielded about 500,000 finds with the help of over 260,000 volunteers from Israel and across the world. At the same time, the work has also been criticized by other archaeologists skeptical of the possibility of conducting rigorous research on findings outside their archaeological context, as I was mentioning. Though it is reasonable to assume that the fills come from the Temple Mount, the debris could have also been brought in from other locations. Professor Israel Finkelstein of Tel Aviv University told the Times of Israel in an email in 2014. Others suggest that the endeavor had been motivated by far-right politics rather than a scholarly desire to scientifically plumb the depths of Temple Mount history. Well, my answer to that is you work with what you've got, right? From 2005 to 2017, the Temple Mount Sifting Project operated in a facility owned by the city of David whose supporting foundation, known in Hebrew as Ilad, has also an agenda of enhancing the Jewish presence in the Palestinian neighborhoods of Jerusalem. After a 2-year hiatus in 2019, the sifting operations moved to the Mitzvah Hamusuot, or the Hamusuot Lookout site on Mount Scopus under the auspices of the Mount of Olives Ridge Jewish Communal Development Fund and supported by the New York-based American Friends of Beit Orot, which also advances similar goals. Barkai always rejected the accusations, also calling them politically motivated. Sneezing in Jerusalem is an extensive political activity. You could turn your head to the right or the left, he told the Times of Israel in 2019. The Temple Mount is the heart and spirit of the Jewish people, including those who are not religious. Everybody, said Barkai. Unfortunately, we are identified by some people as extremists, but I am interested in all civilizations and have no preference for this or that period or people, he added. Barkai was used to being confronted by colleagues who did not share his views. In 1997, he was dismissed by Tel Aviv University after 27 years of work and teaching there due to conflicts with the new leadership of the Institute of Archaeology. In the following years, he joined Bar Ilan and also taught at the Rothberg Institute School at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. In 1975, he started teaching at the Christian Jerusalem University College and never stopped. Devere recalled how Barkai loved the academic work and research, but he also cherished educating the public about archaeology and history. When he saw a child getting excited about finding his first pottery shard, it filled his heart, he said, noting that the late archaeologist who also wrote hundreds of non-academic books on the land of Israel. Before the Temple Mount Sifting Project, Barkai had also made waves for other discoveries. Perhaps the most extraordinary are the Ketef Himon scrolls, two small silver amulets featuring verses from the Hebrew Bible, and more specifically, the priestly blessing from Numbers 6:24 through 27, which is still recited in synagogues and Jewish homes to this day. Barkai discovered them during excavations of Iron Age burials on the grounds adjacent to St. Andrew's Church in Jerusalem in 1979. The findings dating to the latter part of the Iron Age from 1000 to 586 BCE still constitute the earliest known example of the biblical text. One of De Vere's regrets, they did not manage to publish the first book of a 6-volume series documenting all the findings from the Temple Mount Sifting Project before Barkai's passing. I was really hoping that we would manage to publish at least one volume as he was still with us, he said. I don't know where he is now, but I hope he will enjoy it when it happens. So, again, I've seen that little man many times. I know Jerusalem Dateline would go and go to the Temple Mount Sifting Project, and of course he would be there. And you can't replace that world of knowledge and information that has now left us. So, like I said, may his memory be a blessing. And so we have come to the end of our stories once again. And so I would remind you that if you want to help out this broadcast, you can write us at congregation.ariel or Truth in Life Today or just TILT, right? It's at 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. That's 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. This is Thursday evening. Tomorrow evening, can you believe it? We're already well in January, and we're going to have our Shabbat services tomorrow night. And I'm sure Brother Larry, maybe even Brother Vern will be, Rabbi Vern will be there to give us a little bit of a message as well. I can't believe it's time for Shabbat again. And uh, it's again, of course, always 7 p.m. Central Time for this program and for our Shabbat services. Yesterday evening we had Hebrew class, so the Hebrew classes has started up. So look for those also on Rumble, and hopefully, like I said, we'll get that little glitch straightened out, and we'll be back again, run in full order. But pray for us again. Like I said, pray for Richard, who's having his health issues. Pray for Jim that he'll be back soon, and we can move on with what we have and what the Lord wants us to do. Um, a while back, you know, right after my husband passed away 5 years ago. It's like the Lord said, stay the course. And so we've been staying the course and we keep moving forward. So keep us in your prayers. We'll pray for you as well. Pray for those for the Lord's will in this situation, and pray for the people of Iran. Pray for the Christian persecution all around the world. I don't think we've heard much more about what's going on in Nigeria, and I don't exactly know the situation there of what's happening in the African nations and the persecution of the Christian people there. Keep Israel, the Jewish people, in your prayers as well, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And until we see you next time, same time, same place. Shalom.